But my husband came to me and was like, hey, I kind of want to live on a farm on some land. And I was like, say what? Like, do what?
Welcome to The Art of Gardening. I am your host, Melissa Lalo Johnson, and I am thrilled today to have one of my dear friends, Kara Jamison from Blooming Joy Flower Company with us. Welcome, Kara. Thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you for having me, Melissa. I'm really excited to talk with you today.
And Kara, for those of you who do not know anything about Kara, her Instagram handle is Blooming Joy Flower Co. And she has an incredible page. And what I would love to start with is your property. You tell us about the beginnings of your property, when you guys purchased it, and what the whole process was in the beginning of developing your beautiful cut flower farm.
Yeah, well, back in 2016, I was pregnant with my fourth child, and we were living in a beautiful neighborhood, and I honestly thought we would never leave that neighborhood. But my husband came to me and was like, hey, I kind of want to live on a farm on some land. And I was like, say what? Like, do what? And so we started looking for land, and we found a beautiful piece of property in 2016, and there was nothing here on our 7 acres except an old abandoned house. And we bought it, and we moved our 4 kids onto the property into an RV. And we lived in that RV while my husband and I, along with our builder, built our house. And we had a wonderful builder, but we did a lot of the inside finish work just because that's kind of, my husband knows how to do all that kind of stuff, and we're very hands-on DIY people. So we built our house and just started building our farm up from there. We knew that we wanted to have lots of livestock animals, and I wanted to have gardens, but I did not know then the extent of what my gardens would be today.
Yes, it is fabulous. I've been following you for a few years now. I have loved watching season to season as your property has developed, and I'm watching your flower business just kind of take off. So before we talk, there's so many different facets to you too, which is what I love about your page. Not only is it just kind of general gardening, but there's the floral piece to it. There's the farm piece to it. And it's just so interesting. So I guess as you were building your garden out, so you guys bought this property, you finally move into the house, everything's kind of going, and you said, okay, I'm going to start growing flowers. And what was that? How did that sync up?
Yeah, it sort of happened like that. So a little sad part to my story is I actually lost my mom, Joy, to breast cancer in 2015.
I'm sorry.
And it was a couple of years after that, a seed was planted in my heart to learn how to grow cut flowers to bring others joy. And that's exactly why I named my business Blooming Joy Flower Co. after her. And it was like the really early winter, like January, February of 2018. I would say I got this idea to learn how to grow cut flowers. And before that, my husband and I had vegetable gardens for like 10 years or so beforehand. And really the only flowers we grew in those were marigolds to help keep insects away. And I did grow some zinnias, but I didn't know then when I grew zinnias that I could even cut them and they would come back. I just wanted them to stay in the garden and look pretty. I just didn't know anything about flowers then. And so I dove in headfirst to learn everything I could in 2018. And I started planting my first cut flower garden then. And I started with the really easy ones like zinnias, cosmos, sunflowers. And also I did plant dahlias too, which those aren't quite as easy. But those were kind of the 4 first flowers that I started with. And I learned, if I wanted to sell these cut flowers, I needed to learn like when the proper harvest stage was. Like I had no idea that usually when you are creating flower arrangements or selling flowers that you don't cut them when they're blown open. You actually cut them when they're much tighter. And so there was just a lot of learning that happened in my first year in 2018.
For sure. And I love also not only the live cut flowers, but one of the things I remember last year was when you were drying them in your flower house and you were hanging all the different flowers from the rafters and just such a beautiful assortment of flowers. So can you tell us about if someone was going to start a cut flower garden, what would be some of the flowers you would recommend they start and why?
Yeah, for fresh flowers or for drying? Because I can talk. I can talk.
Why don't we start? We want to know everything you know.
Yeah,
So tell us.
yeah,
Tell
yeah.
us fresh and then we go to dried.
One of my favorite things to do, and is a part of my business, is I teach others how to grow their own cut flower gardens. And I have 3 flowers that I always recommend that people start off with because I feel like they're good training wheel type flowers, I would say. And it's exactly the flowers that I started with: zinnias, cosmos, and sunflowers. And one of the reasons why I recommend these 3 is you can plant them when it's warm outside. So after your last danger of frost, you can plant them directly in the ground. And I feel like this is important because a lot of people get very confused with how to grow flowers under grow lights. And I just want to keep it as easy as possible to start off with. And so zinnias, cosmos, and sunflowers are great first ones to grow because you also learn the proper harvest stage of flowers with them too. Like for a sunflower, I had no idea that when you want to go harvest that sunflower to bring inside, you don't wait for it to be all the way open. Like if you're watching the video back, I have these sunflowers bright and beautiful and open. You actually harvest them when you just have one petal showing. And there's a good reason for this too. And part of the reason is you don't want the bees to go ahead and get to it, because if they do, your cut flower is actually not going to last quite as long as if they didn't get to it. And so those are the 3 that I would recommend to start off with. For dried flowers, that's a fun topic. I actually have right behind me, I have a wreath that I think is very fun. So at the time of us recording this, it's nearly fall, and there is a yellow flower that grows in fields called solidago. And this is it right here. Of course, this is a year old, so it's not quite as vibrant and yellow. But that's a fun one that if you have a field, you could just go pick flowers from. Pick some
pretty.
solidago.
It's beautiful.
But a couple of flowers that I purposely grow to dry is a flower called nigella. And it is a beautiful spring flower. And I actually don't dry the flower part. If you don't pick them and you let them go to seed, they will develop these seed pods, and they're beautiful to use in design work. So I'll use nigella. And then there's another flower called straw flower, and it's this papery flower. It's just the most fun thing to feel. It feels like no other flower, but it dries exactly like the way it looks on the plant. So if you have these vibrant pink flowers on the plant, they're actually going to dry just like that too. And so
real quick, and I want to cut you off, but speaking of straw flower, because I grew straw flower one year, and when I cut them, what is the timing for that? Because when I cut mine, they kind of like morphed and like the inside kind of pushed out, and then they looked really strange. When am I supposed to cut those?
So when they're about 1/4 of the way open, basically when you start seeing the first outer petals open, you cut it then, just 1/4 open. You don't want to see the center of the straw flower while it's still on the plant. That's actually too late to cut it.
Okay.
Now, you will see many people use it that way in dry flowers, but personally, I don't think it looks as good. You need to cut it when the head is about 1/4 of the way bloomed.
Okay, perfect. And then let's definitely talk about, because one piece of advice I always give to people when they want plants that are pretty in the yard and then things they can use for cut flower and things they can use dried, which we were just talking at great length about. Tell us about your experience with the wonderful hydrangea.
Oh, hydrangeas. So I love limelight hydrangeas. And one of the reasons that I love them is I have mostly full sun at my farm. I actually don't have too many trees here. And so a lot of what I have to plant in my garden needs to be full sun. And limelight hydrangeas, definitely check that off the list. You know, we stayed at 90 to 100 degrees for much of the summer here, and they just finished blooming, and it's like they didn't bat an eye at that at all. And I love that.
That's awesome. Yes, we are huge fans of the limelights around here as well. So tell me about what I always like to ask people, just for my own common knowledge. What type of pruners do you use? What do you recommend?
I have not found my favorite pruners yet, actually. I tend to lose my pruners quite often. And so I just kind of get whatever I can pick up at the big box store. I'm a little afraid to invest a lot of money into some really good pruners because I just tend to lose them a lot.
I agree. Years ago, one of these kids, like in a high school or whatever, came around, they were selling the Cutco things. And I opened up the Cutco book and I said, oh, they sell pruners. And they were very expensive. And I was like, but Cutco knives are great. Yes. I'm going to do it. I did not own them for a week and I lost them. So,
oh no! Yes. I ended up buying some expensive cutters, and I have no idea where they are at the moment. I'm sure I'll find them buried one day.
I know, right? It's a surprise. Yes. So, tell me about we're kind of bouncing around a little bit, but tell me about you managing your garden and dealing with different pests and disease and different things like that. What have you dealt with? What have you not had to deal with because of the way your place is set up? And can you give us a little background on that?
Yeah, so our farm, we have a lot of livestock animals here. And so our farm really works well together. For example, we have pigs, we have cows, we have chickens. And so in particular, in our pig field, we raise the pigs there for a certain period of time, and then we move them. And because they fertilize the area for a long period of time, we actually grow big sunflower fields in that field. And we let them bloom, and we use them for photography. But the primary thing we actually use it for is to let the sunflower head go to seed, and then we feed it back to our farm animals. And so as far as managing pests and stuff in our garden, I actually feel like our chickens are a huge help to me, because I know that chickens can kill a plant in 2 seconds flat, but I've kind of learned how to be what I call a chicken MacGyver, how to keep the chickens away from the plants. And I don't actually deal a lot with Japanese beetles, which I know is a big struggle for a lot of people in their cut flowers in their gardens. And it's because I have these free-range chickens that are going through my gardens, and I really feel like they're eating a lot of these pests. And as far as disease control, one of the main diseases that we get is botrytis here. And I mainly see that disease on my zinnias, which is really common, that a lot of people get. And so I just make sure that I am succession planting these annuals like zinnias all throughout the summer so I can have fresh plants if botrytis happens to hit.
Tell me though, when you're MacGyvering your chickens, what exactly are you doing? Like, what are some of the tricks to keep the chickens? Because that is one of my things. I would love to have chickens, but I will not have them like running through my garden. So how do you manage that?
Yes. So I have several different flower fields here, and I have an annual flower field, and I do have to have a fence to keep the chickens out there. And it does do a good job of keeping most of them out, but there's always a few that get in. So anytime I direct sow some seeds, I actually have to put another layer of field fencing. It's just this wire fence on top of where I just sowed those seeds, and kind of stake it with these stakes so the chickens can't scratch there and eat the seeds.
That's
so
brilliant.
It's just a scratching barrier. I know it's a lot of extra work, but I feel like it's worth it to keep my pests down. So that's one thing that I do. And then in the fall, I'll plant, like, for example, a lot of irises or a new perennial plant. If it's a plant that I know they might dig up, like an iris rhizome, I actually make a little chicken wire cage, and I put it around my iris rhizome, and I stake it there, and that just keeps them from digging it up. And I just have to remember the next spring to go back through and take it off, because that by that time the plant's established and the chickens don't bother it.
Well, very good advice. Thank you. So tell us about, let's move into some really fun stuff. Tell us about Bloom TV and the work that you're doing with them.
Yeah, I'm having a lot of fun with Bloom TV, and it is a brand new flower TV streaming network that's totally focused on the flower. And, the first thing everybody thinks of, it's all about gardening and floral design. which it is. There's a lot of that there, but there's a lot of other flower content there. Like we have beautiful artists there that are painting flowers. We have people there that are growing edible flowers and teaching us how to cook with them. We also have people telling us how they use flowers medicinally in their life. And it's just been a really fun network to get involved with. And I have a newer role there, which I love, and it is co-hosting a flower talk show that we live stream each week. And I have two other co-hosts that I live stream the show with, and we welcome 1 to 2 guests each week, and we have a certain theme for our show. For example, one of the fun shows that we did recently was we had a Bloom TV expert on that taught us how to make our holiday parties pretty fun. And she showed us how to make these floral ice buckets. And it's where, like, say you have a bottle of champagne or whatever it is, and you just want to jazz it up. She showed us how to make this floral ice bucket where you could see the flowers on the outside of this beautiful ice display. And so we have shows like that. We also have shows where we have some of our edible flower experts come on and they show us how to cook with them, which I didn't even know how to cook or how even to use edible flowers to eat with.
That is awesome. Well, I love that. So tell our listeners how they can access those shows.
Yeah, if you go to bloomtvnetwork.com and you go to the Flowers and Friends tab, you can watch all of our shows there for free. Bloom TV is a paid subscription Flower TV network, but at the time of us recording this, they are offering a month for free that people can watch all of the content. And but our flower talk shows are always free to watch. And we love having them free so we can really educate the public on these different flower topics that we're bringing to them.
That is great. So in the spirit of flowers and floral arranging, tell us about your flower house and how that all started and what do you do in there? What are the purposes that you use in that dedicated space?
Yeah, I saw early on, I was trying to house all of my flowers, my floral designs in my dining room. And I don't have a huge house and I have 4 kids. So it would be like us at the dinner table with all these flowers. I just decided that I needed my own little studio space. And so I had it's a little custom, I don't want to call it a she shed because it's bigger than that, but just for those listening, think of a little she shed where you can store stuff in. I had one of those placed on my property, and my husband and I have been building it out ever since. Building out the walls. Soon we're going to install floor, and I've got a bathroom in here. And one of the first things I had to put in here and had to complete was a flower cooler in here because I went a couple of years with not having a flower cooler. And some people may say, why do you need a flower cooler? Well, when you're trying to sell flowers, you want to make sure that they're as fresh as possible to sell to someone. And flowers can bloom open pretty quickly. And the longer they stay in bloom at my place means the less amount of time they stay in bloom at someone else's place. And so having a flower cooler is just like your refrigerator. It slows down the aging process of a flower. And so I built a flower cooler in here so I could harvest things in the field, store them in the cooler, and then bring them out as I needed to. And so
then tell us a little bit about that. So if you don't have a flower cooler at home, but you have a spare fridge in the basement, how can you do that? When you're cutting your flowers, and then what is the storage? Do we have to put water? Is it water? Not, what's the process for that?
So I've heard of some people storing their flowers in a fridge, and I've done certain flowers for a short period of time, but I always get scared to do that because if your flowers are touching the side of your fridge, it could rid them. So I always say if you don't have a flower cooler, you don't have to have one, especially if you're a home gardener and you're just wanting to enjoy these in your house. Just put them in a darker room and make sure your air is turned down or put them near an air conditioning vent. is what I always did before I had a cooler. You just want to make sure that your flowers are out of direct sunlight, that they are away from fresh fruits and vegetables, because those fresh fruits and vegetables emit a gas that can actually make your flowers go bad more quickly. Yeah, who knew, right?
Yeah, that's crazy. I had no idea.
Yeah. And just make sure that you're changing your water out in your vases or your buckets every couple of days, just, so your flowers stay, the freshest they can be.
So say you're someone, like, obviously a lot of us love to cut fresh flower arrangements a lot and bring them indoors. Do you think that the powder preservers, do you really need those, or is there a different method that you use?
So I think some flowers definitely benefit from that preservative. The preservative just helps feed the flowers, but it also keeps the bacteria down in your water as well. But I'm a big believer. I really try to change my water out every other day or so. And I feel like if you're just changing your water out, that can be sufficient enough if you didn't have the extra money to buy the flower preservatives. And some flowers, quite frankly, don't need it at all. For example, when I am picking all my daffodils, they don't really need flower preservative in there. I just stick them in straight water.
And speaking of your daffodils, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about your daffodil collection?
Well, I saw a few years ago that I loved collecting all the specialty daffodils. Before I got into the cut flower world, I just knew of the wild yellow daffodils that grew on the side of the road. And I just came to learn that there really is thousands of daffodil varieties that a lot of people don't even know about. And so I have over 7,000 daffodil planted at my farm. And a lot of them are rare and hard to find varieties. A lot of them are peach tones, pink tones, white, ruffly daffodil. And I have a good 8-week time span. The daffodils are in bloom at my farm. And that is because I make sure that I am planting a good variety of early bloomers, mid-season bloomers, and late-season bloomers, so I can enjoy them for as long as possible.
I saw this season that you were entering some of them into competitions. How did you find out about that? And how can people like us find out about competitions near them to be able to do that?
I honestly can't remember how I found out about the daffodil competition this year, but I know in years past, I just had people tell me, that follow me on Instagram, like they know that I love daffodils so much. They'll be like, hey, there's this competition on this date. And this one competition that I went to this past year, I happened to live near it and I could go that day. I had no idea what I was doing. I just picked beautiful daffodils and put them in vases and said, here you go. Like, I wasn't expecting to win, didn't even know what they wanted, because when you're a daffodil judge, you're looking for all these different characteristics that they're judging for. And I just did it for the fun of it. And I actually had several daffodil win first, second, and third place, which I was elated.
I bet. That's amazing. Have you heard of other flower competitions outside of daffodil?
Well, there is floral design competitions that I watch a lot. And let's see, off the top of my head at this moment, I'm sure there's Dahlia competitions. I see those on Facebook.
Sure, because I never even really thought about that until I saw that your daffodil and you were doing the competition. I saw the ribbons with it and everything. And I was like, that is crazy. I've never even heard of that. So
yeah, I'm not really in that world. Some people just grow flowers to enter the competitions. I'm definitely not that. I just happen to
because you're doing your farm and your flower business and all the things. Can you tell us? I always love to. Obviously, I do not have a farm. I do not have any animals, so it always interests me when I see these people with like these just robust farms and the animals. What does a typical day look like for you managing all these different animals? Like, how long does it take to do your chores? What types of things do you have to do?
Well, it's a team effort, and I will be the first to say I actually don't take care of all the farm animals. That is my husband and my 4 kids' jobs. My husband and I have really made this farm beautiful because we both have different interests. He has always been the one that has been interested in the farm animals and really growing them. We originally started about 7 or 8 years ago now with a handful of chickens and 2 goats, and at our previous place. And then once we moved here, things have just really multiplied. And so now we have 4 cows, we have pigs, ducks, chickens, turkeys, goats, dogs, and cats. And so every morning, my husband and my 4 kids, they all have their own jobs on the farm, feeding the farm animals. And I am outside early, actually working in my gardens. So I'm the one that does most of the garden stuff around the farm. And so it's definitely a full-time job, to take care of everything here on this farm. But we work as a good team and make it work.
You sure do. Like I said, I love following your page because of all the different facets there are to you. It's so interesting watching all the different things that you do, and even in the kitchen. And can we talk about that just slightly? Because I know we're almost out of time. But tell me about everything that you do. Like, you do so many amazing things, bringing the outside into the kitchen. What are some of your favorite things to do in the kitchen, and what have you learned? What are some tips that you can give us?
Well, I love to grow herbs and bring them indoors and use in my cooking. I actually cook for 7 people every night. And so I learned that I needed to learn how to cook. And I just discovered that I really like to learn how to cook. But I like to make simple meals that are filling and that are Southern style, as I call them. We have a lot of meat and potatoes here. So I just love to bring the outside in. Like, for example, making pork roast. I'll come out to my garden and I'll cut rosemary and thyme and just sprinkle it on my pork roast that I'm cooking in the oven. And it just really elevates it and adds an extra element and yumminess to them. And so I've started sharing my journey on my Instagram too of cooking because people kept telling me, hey, show more of this, kind of thing. And I just like showing what it is that I'm cooking that's fairly easy, but also yummy too.
Well, that is great.
What we have going tonight is, like, on the weekends, my husband's off today. We like to have our smoker going. And we have a smoker outside, and we have a pork roast in there. And so we've been smoking that all day. And once I'm done here and I go take it out of the smoker, I'm going to take it out and I'm going to fire up my outdoor grill. I have this outdoor flat top grill. Like, think of those grills that they use at the hibachi restaurants. We have one of those for outside. And so I will shred up that pork and I will put it on the grill and crisp it up. And we're going to make pork tacos out of that later on tonight.
Well, listen, in my next life, I want to be you. And if I can't be you, I would love to be your neighbor. So I'm just putting that out there. So I think that would be amazing. And again, I mean, to be honest, I feel like we're cutting things so short because we could talk for probably 10 hours about all the different things or more of just, getting to know you better. And but I really thank you so much for spending the time coming on today. And we will definitely have you back in the future. One thing I do love to always remind our friends who are listening to, please, it is a brutal, harsh world out there in the social media algorithm. So if you could please drop a comment, a like, a support, a follow, whatever it is that you're doing, we would really, really appreciate that. That really helps creators get the word out on wonderful people like Kara. So if you are looking for more information on Kara, you can find her on Instagram at Blooming Joy Flower Co. And in your link tree too, there's a lot of great resources in her link tree. And you also are gearing up to start up your newsletter and keep the newsletter going. So if you are interested in hearing from her directly, you can do that right through her Linktree links. Is there anything else in your Linktree or anything else that you want to help people navigate to outside of Linktree?
Yeah. So I have a website, bloomingjoyflowerco.com, and I am currently rebuilding it out right now. But what I'm going to be launching in the future is a lot of growing guides and videos to help you grow your own cut flower gardens as well. The first one I'm going to be releasing really soon is what flowers I'm planting in the fall, or what seeds I am starting in the fall for blooms next spring. Because just because we're into September now, there's actually a lot of planting we can still do for next year.
Well, that is great. And I'm sure that we will definitely have to check in on that. When you air those things, send them my way and I will be sure to share them. That is great information. Well, once again, we know you're a very busy lady, and we thank you for the time that you've given us today. Thank you for everything, and we will see you soon.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Kara. Bye-bye.